All right, all right, all right. Big guest on Chainlink Sports today. We got a guy from my alma mater from St. Joe's, John Flaherty. Graduated a few years before I did, but it's good. He played from 1992 to 2005 in the majors with the Red Sox, Tigers, Padres, Rays, and then finished off with the Yankees. Now he's a broadcaster with Yes Network, which covers the Yankees. So pregame, postgame, he does a lot of stuff with them. And also in 2011, he founded the Rockland Boulders, which is a independent baseball team. So John, thanks for coming on. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Nico. Thanks for having me on, buddy.
No
You're
problem.
very kind too. I graduated a few years before you, 1985, a long time ago.
You're looking great. That's why I had to say you're looking good.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
So, what I kind of want to start off here saying is, I mentioned all the teams you played for. So, like, what I want to know is, like, I've always been curious about, like, what's like that mindset as a player, because you play to provide for yourself and your family. I mean, like, of course you play because you love the game, but it's also your job. It's it's your
Yeah.
career. So, what was that like, kind of bouncing around to different cities and kind of having to, transition to different teams and different, uh, what am I trying to say? Like traditions and just clubhouse culture. Like, what is that like?
Yeah, well, it changed so much from my rookie year to the last team I played with the Yankees, and really the reality is I started off as a single guy playing the game because I loved it and I wanted to get to the big leagues, and then I ended as a father of three kids. So a lot changed during my career.
Right.
Um, but I came up with the Red Sox and just wanted to get to the big leagues. Was happy to be there. Tried to establish myself. And to be honest with you, that first trade from Boston to Detroit was devastating. I mean, I came up through the Red Sox system. Their minor league teams were all on the East Coast. So my family was able to see me play a lot. And then, being an Irishman, the last name Flaherty, playing in Boston, I thought I died and gone to heaven. I want to play here
You
my
fit right
entire
in.
career.
You fit right in.
Yeah, so it was great. And then I got traded to Detroit, and it took me a while to get over that. But in reality, that trade kind of catapulted my career. I got a chance to play every day in '95 and establish myself as a big leaguer. And then I got traded to San Diego. I was still single. I was engaged. So those transitions, believe it or not, to a new team and a new organization are pretty easy. And this as a ball player. You put your head down, you try to do the best you can do, and you try to fit in.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you find your friend group, you find the guys you hang with, but all the while you're just trying to play the best you can play and fit in. So they're all different trades, all different organizations, but I remember all of them fondly.
Right. And then kind of the second part of that question you kind of already answered. Like I was gonna say, like the good memories from all those like moving around, but then also the challenges. But I imagine the challenges kind of came once you kind of became like more of like a family man. You kind of had more responsibility on your plate.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I was so lucky because I have three kids, and when I got traded to Tampa Bay, my daughter was 3 months old, and I built a house down there. And then my two sons were born in Tampa, in Florida. And I was playing for the Devil Rays, we had spring training in Florida. The regular season obviously was in Florida, and we spent our off season in Florida. So from a family situation, my kids didn't know any better. They didn't have to move. They just knew that dad went to his job either during the day in spring training or at night during the season. And from a baseball family standpoint, it was very, very stable. So I was one of the lucky ones from the family environment that I didn't have to move around too much with the kids, which was
Right.
great.
That's awesome. So now, fast forwarding a little bit to your time with the Yankees, and you've played with a lot of great players, like, and you played with Tony Gwynn in San
Yeah.
Diego. So I'm sure that was awesome. I've always heard great things about him. But when you were with the Yankees, you you caught Randy Johnson, but you were kind of like his like preferred catcher, right? So like, so my question is like, what was that whole experience like? I know he was more towards the tail end of his career, but he
Yeah.
was one of the most dominant of all time.
You know what? Going to the Yankees and being on that club from '03 to '05, I had competed against those guys and, realized how talented they were, Derek and Jorge Posada and Bernie and all these guys. And then you
Yeah.
get in the clubhouse with them and you're like, wait a second, they're just regular guys who happen to be great baseball players on great teams. So
Yeah.
when Randy came over, it was the same thing. It was like, okay, I'm looking around this clubhouse. There's star players everywhere, and Randy Johnson just fits in. And that whole thing happened in '05 because Jorge and Randy just didn't get along, and it was kind of a relationship that wasn't working. And Joe Torre asked me if I would, they were going to try something different. Would I be able to yell and scream at Randy for 9 innings or however long he pitched? And I was like, sure, I'll do whatever I have to do. So, to tell you the truth, I kind of threw myself into this role as being his catcher. I
Yeah.
was there for him, and I would catch his side sessions. I would, do everything to make him feel like my existence as a baseball player revolved around him and him doing well. And it worked. I mean, we yelled and screamed at each other during games. I mean, I would get myself worked up into the state because I'm a pretty mild mannered, calm guy. But when I would catch him, I would bring myself to another level. I'd fire balls back at him. I'd yell and scream at him.
Right.
And for some reason, it worked. He went, I think it was 11-1 during the second half, and it was fun on the field. He's a tough guy off the field. He was a tough guy to be a teammate with. So that part wasn't very pleasant, but the wins and losses, it kind of worked. It worked.
Right. And so like the whole like yelling and screaming, was that because like he was like stubborn and he might not want to like be on the same page as you, or like that's just his style, like that's how you kind of got to get him like hyped up?
Yeah, he's a stubborn guy. He's a tough guy, but he's one of those people that he wanted to intimidate you and feel
Yeah.
like he's the man, and he was the man. But I was like, listen, I'm playing once every fifth day, and I'm not going to let you intimidate me and walk all over me. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I just kind of got to the point that I realized, what, if you fire a ball back at him, it got his attention. If you yelled at him, he would get to another level. And to be quite honest with you, the first half of '05 as a Yankee, he was kind of a mild mannered. He wasn't the big unit that we remembered and that we faced.
Yeah.
And part of me yelling and screaming at him was to get him to get angry again, to be that fierce competitor again, and for some reason to work.
That's great. That's that's actually a really great story. I didn't know any of that. But now post playing career, um, in terms of like the Rockland Boulders, how did that become a reality for you in terms of founding them, and how did that whole process kind of originate?
Yeah, I mean, people say that I founded the Rockland Boulders. It was a collaborative group of investors that wanted to bring baseball to Rockland, an independent league. And I got approached by a man by the name of Ken Lehner, who was my traveling secretary while I was in Tampa playing for the Devil Rays. And he was part of this ownership group that wanted to bring baseball to Rockland County. And he approached me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this? We're thinking about doing it." And my initial reaction was I wasn't interested. And then the more I thought about it, I thought about independent baseball being the second chance for a lot of players, right? I mean,
Yeah.
players who don't get drafted out of high school or college and they have no place else to go, they can go to independent ball and try to get better and
Yeah.
showcase their skills.
And
And
then
I
and then
started
also
thinking
like
about,
now because like all these guys who are being cut from the minors and all these like teams that are being shut down,
yeah,
a lot of them are just gonna go straight into indie ball.
yeah, and I looked at it as the land of opportunity for players is what I thought it was going to be, and it turned out to be that, but also it became more in that people in our community started working for the Rockland Boulders. I've had kids who came up to me, "Can I get an internship, whatever, in the front office?" Or there were kids who wanted to get an internship in doing what we're doing, some sort of broadcasting or behind the scenes camera work. So the whole experience for me became more than just the players out on the field. It became people who wanted to work in the sports industry getting their first step. And I'm
Yeah.
proud of the fact that I would go to Madison Square Garden and watch a Ranger game, and there's a kid who worked for us for the Rockland Boulders who is now working for MSG and for the Rangers. So I as proud of I am of the players who have gone on to play organized affiliated baseball. I'm equally as proud as the kids who have worked in our front office and have gotten other opportunities.
That's amazing that you're able to like kind of like that ripple effect almost, kind of like opportunity sprouting for someone that you didn't even know. That's really awesome. And then you kind of mentioned this kind of like the whole broadcasting side of things. What was that transition like? Did you have any prior history of that, or like any like prior skills of broadcasting, or just like what were like the challenges of like going over to like Yes and doing all that?
It's crazy the way everything worked out, right? I went to George Washington University from St. Joe's High School, and the only reason I went to GW, they gave me a full scholarship to play baseball. I was not a great student,
Right.
so after my second year at GW, I had to declare a major, and it was either psychology or speech communications. And I said, you know what? I was a shy kid, introverted, did not speak well in front of people. It scared me to death, and I said, if nothing else, I'm going to learn how to speak in front of people. So I chose a speech communications major, not thinking that I would ever do anything with it. And then you fast forward 18 years later when um, I retired on a Monday, and I had 5 voicemail messages on my phone on Tuesday
Wow.
from networks that, yeah, they wanted me to audition, and they had just heard me being interviewed as a player. And they said, you know, we want to give this guy an audition and see if it might be a fit. So I actually auditioned for SNY, the home of the Mets. I
Should have
auditioned for
came to the Mets,
MSG.
man. What the hell?
Yeah, are you a Met fan?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a good story because I did an audition for SNY. I did 2 days spring training games, did a pre and post game show with Matt Yeloff when he was still at SNY,
Okay.
and they offered me a contract to broadcast for the Mets. I think it was like a 50-game package, and I would do some pre and post game work. But the way it all turned out is that George Steinbrenner was in Tampa, Florida, and he watched me do these auditions for the Mets. And we know that Mr. Steinbrenner hates the Red Sox and hates the Mets. And as it turned out, he called my boss at Yes, John Filippelli, and he told him, he said, Flaherty's not working for the Mets. You have to bring him over to Yes. And so my
Okay.
boss calls my agent and says, you know, we don't have any room for John. I mean, this is at the end of spring training, so they had all their announcers lined up. And he
Yeah.
said, we have no room for him, but Mr. Steinbrenner said I have to hire him. So they hired me to a 30-game contract without any idea of what I was going to be doing. And the only reason I got my job back with the Yankees and Yes was because George Steinbrenner hates the Mets. So that's how it all started.
And you know what? When Steinbrenner wants something, he gets it. You know
He
what I mean?
gets
And
it. He
that's
gets it.
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. And you know,
Yeah.
like you can even look back and like you were one of those things that Steinbrenner was not going to be denied getting. That's funny. That's awesome. So, last question I have, just simple question: what is your favorite memory in in your entire life of baseball? You know, whether it's like insane like little league game where you had like 4 home runs, or up to like the major leagues. Like, what's like the number one memory for you?
Wow, there are too many. I mean, you know, I'll never forget the first day that I spent in the big leagues. You know, I got called up to the Boston Red Sox in 1992 for opening day, Yankees Red Sox, and I was at my place in New York, um, visiting my family before I was going to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, to AAA. And I get a phone call in the morning on opening day. What time can you be at the stadium? It's a 1 o'clock start. I literally showed up at a quarter to one, threw a uniform on, and was announced as a member of the Red Sox standing in Yankee Stadium, the
Wow.
place that I grew up watching games. So, you know, that's kind of a tough memory to beat. But
Yeah,
there are so
absolutely.
many things. I mean, you know, I think of St. Joe's, we won the county championships in '84 and hadn't done that in forever, and that was a big deal and a big
Yeah,
thrill that I'll never forget. You know, GW. Went in there with 13 freshmen and turned that program around. You know, there are just so many memories. First home run, walk-off hit against the Red Sox. It all kind of comes together to just an amazing ride that I've had and been lucky enough to play for a long time, and now lucky enough to broadcast games for Yes.
that's awesome. So that's all I got for you, John. I really appreciate your time, and of course, Steinbrenner took you away from the Mets. But listen, uh, I gotta say, I think Gary, Keith, and Ron, they they might be absolutely like top tier that they got going on there, and I think having you on that team would have been awesome.
No, I appreciate that. I love listening to those guys. They get along great. They have great chemistry in the booth. So I'm with
Yeah.
you. I enjoy their broadcasts. And thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it, and good luck with everything. Okay.
Thanks, John. You too. Signing off.
Okay.